now going to move to another question that was received online. This one's a little long, so you have to bear with me. When COVID, let me see, just as a reminder, Orlando, we're going to start with you here. When COVID impacted the U.S. in 2020, everything went all virtual to accommodate the lack of access society as a whole had. This change showed those that are homebound or disabled they were able to participate when the change was made for society as a whole. Since the return to work and more face-to-face access, those accommodations have been deemed too expensive for a limited portion of the community. Since 1 in 4 Americans are disabled, what will you do as a congressional candidate to ensure that more than 25% of the community are able to participate despite being disabled?
Well, I'd like to ask you to repeat that, but if I understand the question, it's more for handicapped and being able to attend virtually. And I think, one of the things that, we could do to incentivize that is to make it so that if you are handicapped and you're working virtually, you'd get a dispensation or some sort of credit for that. I think one of the things that we did when we were in COVID is we found out that we could work virtually. And it seemed like before then, we got a lot of resistance, like we just can't do that, we can't do that. And almost overnight, we've gone virtual. And I think we've got to continue to go in that direction because the climate crisis that we've talked about is going to force us to do that. If we continue to use cars, things like that in order to get to work, that's just exacerbating our climate crisis.
Thank you. Adam.
So this is probably one of those things that we didn't get a whole lot of response from Doug Lamborn on because up front, I don't know. Like that is a great question, and as a constituent bringing that question to me, it's written down, and we'll have a plan for that, because you're absolutely right. It's unacceptable that we have people who want to contribute to our society sitting at home and being undervalued. That needs to be fixed. So when I get into office, that's going to be something that I look at in order to create a program that enables people to get access to computers and internet and things like that in order to be productive members of our society, because they want that and they value that. They want to be valued in our communities. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And now moving online, Joe, you have 60 seconds.
This is a deeply passionate issue for me. Growing up, my mother had multiple sclerosis, so I have lived the experience of being someone that's a child of someone who's disabled. I worked for Easter Seals, the organization that literally wrote the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is something that is tremendously important to me, and it goes well beyond just when we're talking about workplace accommodations. Hybrid works, all of these things, is an economic enabler. As a husband with a dual working family, we couldn't function without the flexibility that we get through remote work. And so this is something that I see as an economic benefiter, and something that not just for disabled, but for all folks, to make sure that we're protecting workers and that we're getting them the access that they need so they can be as productive as they are.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, thank you. I think this topic is very relevant to this district. We have many disabled veterans in this community that are still relatively young and want to work and want to contribute. I think virtual work is an accommodation that should be made to those that need it, just like ADA ramps, in the 90s. We need to embrace Americans and view them as a contributing member of society, and just facilitate their growth and their contribution. And I think we should absolutely embrace that. We should maybe propose legislation that demands employers to accommodate such disabilities, and I would support stuff like that.
Thank you. River.
So as someone who is an educator during the pandemic at a higher education facility, UCCS, I have seen a lot of students who have adapted actually quite well, and some students prefer the hybrid option. We're the greatest technological country in the world, and adaptability is key to this success. We should be appropriating more funds into this technology and creating more equitable programs for those with disabilities as well. We need to help our underrepresented communities and increase training into this technology so that way everyone can take advantage of this as well. Thank you.
Orlando? Adam?
Another thing that, I think we need to keep looking at is that during COVID, we proved how much work we can get done. And now that we're being forced back into the office by these corporations, we need to fight back. And that's another area where, unions can help us fight back. We shouldn't be getting forced back when we've proven that we can be just as productive and much happier working from home. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving online. Or Joe for a 30-second rebuttal, if you'd like it.
At Easter Seals, I was a strong public advocate for individuals with disability across the entire spectrum of life, from children to dealing with intellectual disabilities to adults with physical disabilities. As your congressman, I will continue to be a strong advocate for the disabled, for working families, for all of those. This is an economic enabler. This is not just the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do.
And John?
In public schools, we've embraced FAPE, fair and appropriate public education. I think we can embrace something similar in today's workforce. Thank you.
River?
One thing that I think is worth pointing out is that in order for this technology to be more equitable for a disabled portion, we should probably make sure that those who are on disability are allowed to save more than $2,000 in their account without losing those disability benefits. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That wraps up that particular question. Mrs. Zergan.